Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at onpurposely.com.
We live in a time of unprecedented comfort. We value safety and security, and maybe that's why it's so easy for us to be shaken when the straight road we're on takes a sudden curve and seems to be pointing us in a direction we don't want to go. Welcome to the Shaken Podcast. I'm Steve Sunshine. Your confidence, your mood, your perspective, even your faith may be shaken because of something that's happened in your life. Jesus told us we'd have trouble in this world, so we're shaken but not surprised. He also said, "Take heart, I have overcome the world." In this podcast, you'll hear honest conversations with people who have or are going through life-altering hard times and have found that God was with them in the midst of it all. In the midst of suffering, there can still be joy. My conversation with Randy Phillips includes some wise pastoral advice on dealing with suffering, but also some goofiness, and a little bit about his career with Phillips, Craig & Dean. I hope you enjoy it. Randy Phillips is a pastor in Austin, Texas, and you may know him even more so from the legendary CCM group, Phillips, Craig & Dean.
Legendary.
Yeah, of course. You don't think so?
Neither do my kids.
Well, they didn't. Yeah, you figured they wouldn't, but you guys for a while there had every third song on the radio.
Well, thanks, Steve. You were kind enough to add our songs. You and great radio stations. We were blessed to have some pretty good songs, and I think some of the songs may have resonated with people. I sure hope so. I want to think we had some impact along the way. But Steve, really, thank you for adding our songs.
Oh, well, no big deal. Particularly, I remember the first day, you can picture where I was, actually sitting in my office, but listening to your version of Revelation song and just going, wow.
Thank you.
And then I listened to it again. So that's...
I love that song, obviously. Carrie Job covered it. There was a number of other artists that covered it. On our album, it was the last song we recorded, and our record company said, "We don't really want you to record the song." And we said, "Okay, why not?" And they said, "Well, it's been covered. Carrie Job, among others, phenomenal. The song is too long. And it only has 4 chords." Well, we said, we really generally don't push back too much, but we said, we're going to do the song because we do it in concert and it just touches people. We're going to do the song. And they said, fine. So the guy that listens to, albums and selects the songs for radio, he was going to some thing in Florida, driving from Nashville to Florida. He put our CD in to, listen to which song he thinks we should single, and he calls us. He was weeping. I'm like, "Dan, are you okay?" He wasn't an emotional guy. "Yeah, I just listened to your album, and obviously your first single needs to be Revelation song." We said, "What? Why?" "It's too long." Carrie Job already covered it, and it only has 4 chords.
Right.
But he was right, and my goodness, 17 weeks at number 1.
Wow. You didn't have to pull the, I just want green M&Ms trick or anything. Some rock star thing.
No,
it just happened.
I like green M&Ms.
Yeah. So now I like full disclosure. Randy and I were on a countdown show together for about 10 years, and we had a lot of fun, and I've heard a lot of your stories, and I've been thinking about...
Sorry.
It's true that I've heard some of them more than once. What are the chances of that?
You asked me one time, off the air, you said, "Now, are these stories true?" They are, Steve. They are. But I also have this motto, Steve.
Oh, yeah.
Never let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Yes. Absolutely. You have had some wise words in the past about how people deal with the onslaught of something that comes up, whether it's the end of a relationship or a bad diagnosis or loss of a job or loss of a dream. And as a pastor of frankly a large church, you must hear these stories, more than most people.
Oh, Steve, it's a heartache, really. I can see how pastors, counselors, people that hear people's heartache could burn out, because if you care about people, which I desperately do, just taking their stuff in. I've never been good about going home and like, okay, not thinking about that till tomorrow. I take their pain home with me. And through the years, it's just been, oh Lord, it's just been, people go through such heaviness. It's and Jesus said we would. He said, just because you become a Christ follower, I don't put you in an isolated room. The rain falls on the just, it falls on the unjust. It's a broken world, so broken. And as a result, it breaks all of us.
What do you say to someone who comes in and says, why is God letting this happen?
All the time. I can't answer for God, but I just ask them to be a good steward of suffering. God entrusted this to you. I don't think he caused it, but he allowed it. Can you be a good steward of suffering? Now, whether that's a brokenness with your children or with your spouse or with a friend or with your career, just where is God? Most all the Psalms, we think of the Psalms as worship songs, which a lot of them are, but most of them are God, where are you? It's the Psalter shaking his fist in the face of an invisible God, saying, I feel like the heavens are brassed over. I don't feel like you're hearing me. Do you know do you see my tears? And the Lord always is, I see you. I see you. And I now hear your prayer, and I will either change the situation or change you to face the situation. But I need you to be a good steward of suffering.
In a weird sort of way, and I almost hesitate to say this out loud, when I got my diagnosis and had the time to think about it with Parkinson's, I thought to myself, and this is not the moment that it happened, but at some point it occurred to me that it was actually an opportunity.
Exactly.
To be faithful.
That's the.
And again, I'm not sugarcoating it, because it doesn't mean it's easy and I'm jumping for joy.
No.
In fact, my balance isn't as good as it used to be, so I'm definitely not jumping for joy.
Well, you were a ballerina back in the day.
Well, I know. Actually, a little segment of when I got diagnosed, I went into this neurologist's office, and he had 2 med students with him. He asked permission if they could be there, and I was like, sure. And so they were having me go through these tests. I had no idea what they were going to say, and they said, how's your balance? And I said, well, my balance has never been very good. That's what killed my career as a gymnast. Anyway, none of them thought it was funny.
They didn't?
No, because they knew what was wrong.
Yeah, I would have laughed though, Steve. I just did.
Yeah, and you know.
I know.
But that's all right. Yeah, it's a very surreal thing when something happens that changes a person's life. And I've talked with people on this show that have had chronic illness, that have had loved ones with brain tumor, or grew up through an abusive situation, just you name it.
Yeah.
And the common thread seems to be that if you're looking for him, you find God. He's there. He's there in it with you.
Yep, He's there. And so, to be a good steward of suffering, Steve, is what you're describing. Lord, you're trusting me with this to be a good steward, to keep looking to you, even though there's a million reasons why I shouldn't. That you're still a good God, even though there's a million reasons why my logical mind could go to draw other conclusions. So, Steve, I thank the Lord for your faith that you are a good steward of suffering. There's you mentioned earlier when the podcast started, focus on what's left, not what's lost.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a couple in the church. They had 2 sons. One of them sadly was killed in a motorcycle accident.
Mm.
And they so poured their grief into what's lost, and they didn't focus on what's left. So the son that was left, precious teenager, they weren't present with him, and they weren't present with each other, sadly. Mm. They lost their marriage, and they're struggling just to reconnect with their son. It's easy and natural to focus on what was lost, tragedy, but as you're a good steward with suffering, the Lord will help turn you to focus on what's left. Who's around you, and how do you pour your attention and compassion into them?
Yeah, it's you run the risk of a double tragedy.
I know.
By losing what's left as well.
I know.
And that's that's hard.
It's so hard.
And how do you get, if you're that person where you've lost somebody, I mean, that's traumatic, it's sudden typically. How do you get them or encourage them to take the first step out of and when is the right time, when the freshness of the grief is starting to maybe fade a little bit?
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Oh, that's a great question. The first thing I try to do when someone has either a prolonged loss or a sudden loss, those are all terrible, but just to help people discover the difference between grieving and mourning. Mm. It's such a big difference, spiritual difference. We use them, interchangeably. I'm grieving or I'm mourning. Jesus actually said in the, in Matthew, in the Beatitudes, he said, "Blessed are those that mourn." Because when you mourn well, he said, you'll be comforted. I can't say that for grieving, because grieving is so depleting of the soul. There's just no comfort to be found. But he said there's comfort in mourning. They both experience loss, but one of them is different than the other. In 1 Thessalonians 4, and I think it's 13, the Apostle Paul says, brothers and sisters means, family of God. We don't want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death. And then he says this next line, so that you do not grieve like the rest of mankind who have no hope. For we believe that Jesus died and rose again, Easter. Mm-hmm. And so we believe that God will bring Jesus with those who've fallen asleep. So loss happens to the believer and the unbeliever, but grieving and mourning are different. For the person without hope, it's just, is that it? Is that all there is?
Yeah.
For those that have hope in Jesus, it's not grieving. There's hope. And in that hope, you'll find comfort. Lost my mother and dad in the past 2 years and larger than life, and I went out to their cemetery and traced their names etched in stone. And that's it. If I was a person with no hope, I'm like, well, that's it. You live, you die, that's it. But because I have hope, I'm not grieving. I'm mourning, but I will see them again because of the resurrected Jesus Christ.
It had never occurred to me that grieving and mourning that there was a distinction between them.
I believe there is.
I mean, I think about the word, I guess we're going to play etymologist here for a second. I think about the word grievous.
Yeah.
Or grievance.
Yes.
And that's got a negative, tone to it.
For sure.
And I don't think there's anything equivalent to that that's related to mourning that I can think of.
Well,
like you have a grief with somebody, you might be angry at them.
Yeah. And mourning it still acknowledges loss. It's not acknowledging something terrible happened to me. It's acknowledging it. It's going through it. Don't rush the mourning experience, because Jesus said, when you get to the end of it, you'll be comforted. And so I'll see my mother and dad again. You'll see your loved ones. You'll see, for someone that's just gone through a terrible divorce, that's a death with no body. It's just a ongoing death. Same thing. You can grieve it. I'll never love again. I'll never, all that stuff. That's grieving. Or mourning. I have lost something dear. I've lost memories. I've lost, go through it. But knowing that on the other side of that, well, first of all, Jesus is with you every step. But on the other side, you will find comfort in the fact that you'll love again and you'll laugh again.
Yeah. I heard someone say that Jesus may or may not be the healer of whatever is troubling you, at least on this side of the grave. He might be, he might not be, but he will be your sustainer.
Oh, yeah.
In the midst of it.
And when he said, I'm going away, that broke their hearts. He told those disciples, I'm going away. Like, what? We've left everything to follow you. I know, but I'm leaving. But I'm not going to leave you in a state of grief. I'm going to send back my Holy Spirit. And he particularly named it. I love the name he chose, Comforter. I love that, because if there's anything all of us need, Steve, we need comforting. Life can be so harsh, and I want to thank the Lord that his Spirit, that he named his Spirit Comforter, because that's what it's been to me. Through music, through prayer, through connection with church family, you'll find comfort in the middle of your pain.
Jesus talks about abiding in me.
Yeah.
As the vine and us being the branches, and this doesn't only apply to suffering, but I think it does, because it's about whether you'll bear fruit. Mm-hmm. And when you're connected to him, one of those fruit I think could be peace.
Yeah.
I found in my own life that when I had the least peace that I can think of, it was a couple of years ago. Just a lot of stuff was going on. But when I focused on, actually it wasn't that passage, but it was in Philippians, where Paul is saying, be anxious about nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication and with thanksgiving, make your requests known to God.
Yes.
And then the peace of Christ, which passes all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus.
I know. Isn't that a great scripture? The passes logic. Logically, I should be falling apart. A lot of people that experience what I experienced have fallen apart, sure. There's something, though, about the Holy Spirit that just kind of lifts you. It takes you to a place that it just like, this isn't logical, but it's peace that surpasses your logic, your understanding.
Mm-hmm. It's good that we have a God that's bigger than we are. I just think.
Oh my goodness!
People say, but, this doesn't make any sense or whatever about some miracles or whatever, and you think, and I don't know who coined this, but it's like if we were able to understand God, we're not sure that we'd be worshiping Him.
No, we wouldn't.
Yeah.
Oh, we try to worship. That's why He said, "Don't have any first commandment. I don't want you to have any other gods besides me, and don't make an image of it, because that image usually turns out to look a lot like ourselves."
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I know. I'm invisible. I'm all powerful, but I'm here. I am here, and He's there for those that are not sure. He's there.
Yeah. Have you experienced this? I'm sure you have in some way. This peace in a time that has been a struggle. Can you think of a story like that?
Yeah, I think when I had a terrible break of heart concerning a family member, and I just went into a funk. Just wanted to close, wanted to isolate, wanted to get small.
Yeah.
And it was in that funk, depression, whatever else was going on, just sadness of heart, that God began to reshape me. And will you or will you not be a good steward of suffering? And I didn't even understand what that meant at the time. Well, when I chose to be a good steward, I'm like, God, how am I going to hold this that reshapes me, makes me better, and makes me able to help other people who are going through this? So,
yeah,
I don't think that I got to the other side like, now I'll help people. It was sort of in the middle of it that I started. Right. You can help people all along the way on your journey through sadness.
And it may be in small ways, but that person, or seemingly small ways, but maybe it's not small to that person.
No.
The one person you helped.
And sometimes just one word, or not even a word, just a hug, just a handshake, just a nod of the head. I know. Mm-hmm. Sometimes your heart will connect with someone that's been through it and came out on the other side better. I trust that that's what the Lord will do for all of us.
Awesome. Randy, I really appreciate your wisdom.
I didn't know if there was any wisdom there, Steve.
No, there's some wisdom. So I'm thinking, I know there are, literally millions of Phillips, Craig, and Dean fans.
Oh, millions.
Ever since you guys got off that plane from England.
Tens
were
of
met
tens.
By throngs.
Tens of tens.
What are you? But they're there, and they want to know what you're up to now.
Oh, we're singing. We're still singing.
Excellent.
We're singing. We go out. We don't tour the big bus tour thing like we used to, but we take our band. There's 5 guys in the band, and the 3 of us. We still singing. Still going. 30,
That's awesome.
32 years, Steve.
32. And you still like being in the same room. You don't have. I think that's a lot, really.
It is.
That's a lot of time, and
it is.
And you lasted 3 times longer than the Beatles.
Okay, there's that. That's the. That's a good one, Steve. I think we'll put that on our next album.
Is there a is there a way that people can interact with you or follow you or?
Yeah, of course. PhillipsCraigandDean.com is our website, and There's a way to email us. There's a way to connect with us. My personal socials, Randy PCD. Randy PCD.
All right.
I'll correspond with you. I sure do miss you, Steve. I saw you regularly for weeks on end, and then suddenly no Steve.
Saw me regularly on...
Well, you lived in the same city I lived in, Austin,
Oh,
Texas.
yeah, it was more than weeks. That was like a decade.
Okay, there's that. It felt like weeks.
That might be a compliment. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it is. It is. But you're such an amazing man, and I miss you.
Well, I definitely miss you too. And how can, because I think I'd also like to recommend to anybody who is interested to catch you as a preacher, where's the place to do that online?
Well, Steve, I have 6 churches now. 6. Can you believe that?
So it's 6 individual churches as opposed to 6 branches of one church.
6 branches.
You're a busy man.
Well, I guess that's good. Is that a compliment? I don't know. Okay.
No, that is a compliment.
Life.
I've seen that thing grow, and it's been amazing.
Life, Life, .family.
Life.family.
Yeah, no, it's not lifefamily.com or .org. It's just life.family. Throws me off every time. I told them I don't like that. And they said, you're old. They said, you're old.
No.
Life.family, you can see my message. The good thing about my message is you can put it, down at the bottom, you can put it on like two times speed, and you can hear a 30-minute message in 15 or whatever.
I'm trying to decide if that's a good idea.
Right? No.
I've seen that option. I've never used
I
it.
do sound like Mickey Mouse if you do that, though.
Yeah, well, it'll go with the Donald Duck impression you guys sometimes do. Awesome. Well, as expected, the conversation has just sort of deteriorated into random chatter. So, good to know that some things don't change.
Yeah, I know
Randy, I really appreciate you and your ministry as an artist and as a pastor and as a friend, and thank you very much.
It's an honor, Steve. I pray that this has been helpful to somebody, and I pray that maybe they come to love Jesus more.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. And we'd like to see as many people encouraged as possible. And you can help by liking, sharing, and subscribing to this podcast, and by just telling your friends. Find new episodes at purposely.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Oh, and one more thing. If you enjoy Shaken, if you're encouraged by it, if you think someone else would be, give us a good review.